The Sports Vision Podcast. NFL.
Here inside the Sports Vision Podcast NFL edition, Anthony Notarile, Anthony Santaniello, the award-nominated duo of the Anthonys, as we like to call it here on Sports Vision. We're here to talk about one team and one name in particular that everybody in the NFL seems to be talking about. It's the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's what I believe to be one of the most polarizing coaches in the NFL, Chip Kelly. Some people think the guy is just tossing everything out the window for the Eagles. Others believe that there is a method to his very madness, and I think that's what we're here to discuss. Anthony Notarile, again, joined with Anthony Santaniello. Always exciting when the two Anthonys get together, go at it. But today, I think it's going to be a little bit more heated than usual.
I agree.
We've talked about WrestleManias, and we've agreed. We've talked about MLB, and we've agreed. But I can already feel the tension in the room right now. I don't think there's much of an agreement between you and I.
Well, there's
all
some.
the moves the Eagles made.
There's some agreement. I will say this. There's some moves I agree with the Eagles making. There's some that I don't agree with the Eagles making. And I think that, I'm a big college football nut myself, and I watched Chip Kelly bring Oregon to prominence and what they were. And it just seems like he's trying to rebuild that in the NFL. We saw it's failed before. Nick Saban's tried to do that with the Miami Dolphins. It didn't work. He lasted, a year or two with the Dolphins and then had to go back to college. So, Chip Kelly did a great job last year, but if he keeps doing what he's doing, in my opinion, I don't think it's going to work out with the way that he recruited in college, the way he got players to come to Oregon. He just got fast players. He didn't get big or strong players. He just got the guys that worked in his system.
Well, here's the deal with Chip Kelly. I do think he can succeed in the NFL, and I think he's already showed it. 20 wins in 2 years, that's not a bad stretch by any imagination. He did make the playoffs in this first year. Didn't make it last year. They did go 10-6. The biggest part of the reason they didn't make it last year was because of the dreadful defense. And every Eagles fan, you always hear them talk, and a lot of them do complain. They're notorious for always hating the moves their team makes. But I think with the Eagles, Chip Kelly really is addressing the defense and putting to rest that, he just cares about the offense, but people are still on his case. We'll go through some of the moves they made, and we'll kind of dissect each one.
Okay.
They let go of some guys like Kyle Williams and Trent Cole, but I think everyone, that wasn't really a huge opinion people had on those moves. Then, all of a sudden, what was probably, and I'm not kidding when I say this, the biggest NFL trade that I've ever seen happen in my lifetime. In my 21 years of living, I don't think I've seen a bigger NFL trade. I got the text, and my jaw dropped on the floor while I was driving.
Logan Mankins for Tim Wright didn't make your jaw drop.
No. That was a blockbuster deal, no doubt about it. But LaShawn McCoy heading to Buffalo with Rex Ryan, and in return, linebacker, third-year player in the NFL, Kiko Alonso, coming to the Eagles. The Twitter world erupted, the Eagles fan world erupted, and every single NFL fan had an opinion on this. Whether you love the Eagles or hate them or indifferent, you had an opinion. Now, Anthony, Sant, whatever I'm calling you.
We'll differentiate. Sant, you're Ant.
All right, there you go. You go first because I know our opinions are going to clash hard.
When I saw this move, first off, it was on National Free Pancake Day, so I was, of course, enjoying my IHOP for free on that day, but I saw the move. I had to check my phone at least 3 different times to make sure that it was real. I had to search it on Twitter to make sure every source confirmed
Twitter's like the go-to.
It really is. It's crazy. But looking at, LaShawn McCoy was the second best running back in the league last year. A few years ago, he's still a top 5 guy. So just to see him get shipped out so easily, and I get it before free agency starts, they want to get something back before you have to lock him up to a long-term deal, but the Eagles cleared up a lot of cap space, but Kiko Alonso coming off a torn ACL. If it was coming off his rookie year, I would say I'm all for that. But coming off a year where he tore his ACL, I don't know how much it's going to affect him coming back in his first full season, and if they gave up too much in McCoy to really depend on Alonso for what they're going to get.
And another thing that people were giving Chip Kelly slack for, and I'm not a big, I don't really look too much into this, but obviously Kiko Alonso is the Oregon player. This now makes 9 Oregon players that Chip Kelly has on his team. That's something that I don't really look into. I don't think that's a big deal, but some people, Eagles fans are livid about the fact that he brought in an Oregon guy. What's your take on that?
The thing is that Oregon has this aura about them that they're cocky, they're loud, they're in your face. So clearly,
is a huge Oregon fan.
No, I hate Oregon with every fiber of my being. So to see them, I mean, some guys are good. Some guys that come out of there are good. I mean, I liked LaMichael James when he came out of there. I thought he was going to be a good running back. He didn't obviously get a chance yet, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Eagles brought him in to be a backup running back. But the thing that he's trying to do is turn these college players that worked in his system in college, where the talent isn't nearly as good in the NFL, into a system where it could succeed at the next level. And that's why there's a difference between college and the NFL. It's some players are made for it and some aren't. And the players that he had at Oregon, most of them weren't made for the NFL because they couldn't keep up with the changing systems every week of certain teams. And what he's trying to do is recreate that. And I just don't think it's a good idea for the Eagles. They're a team I want to see succeed. I want to see them get to a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl for the first time in history. I want to see them get to the promised land, and I don't think this is the right way to go about it.
See, I think Kiko Alonso, I mean, I know the ACL injury is a huge reason why, but you look at 2 years ago in 2013, could have easily been Defensive Rookie of the Year. Sheldon Richardson won it, but I don't think he had an outstanding 2013 year. 2014, it's the ACL thing, but in an updated NFL world we're in 2015, ACL injuries, you look at guys like Gronk or Macklin, they're easy to come off of and have a successful year. There's so much that goes into working out and rehabbing that ACL. So I'm not worried. I think it's a great move for the Eagles, who now, we'll get to some other moves they made, but they have, a defense consisting of Byron Maxwell, Kiko Alonso, Fletcher Cox, Connor Barwin, Michael Kendricks, Malcolm Jenkins. There's so many guys that they have now on the defense. It's almost like the roles have reversed, but just sticking with this McCoy move, a couple reasons why I like it, and I think it's good for the system of the Eagles. And by no means am I saying LaShawn McCoy is a bad running back. The Bills got a great deal out of it too. I'm just saying it's not highway robbery like people think, because you get a great linebacker in Kiko Alonso, who I believe can be, when healthy, a top 3 to 5 linebacker in the NFL. I think, outside of Luke Kuechly, it's up for grabs, and I think he is definitely going to be a playmaker, and he fits the scheme perfectly. Also, obviously, the Oregon thing helps him build a relationship with the coach. Secondly, LaShawn McCoy was asking for a boatload of money. Now, he didn't necessarily have a down year from 2 years ago, but all of his numbers were down. So I think that's a bad spot to want a lot of money when all of your numbers are going down.
I agree.
I think that he clashed with Chip Kelly a lot, and I think ever since Chip Kelly went in, the fix was kind of in for McCoy to leave. I've read so many reports over the last year that McCoy was not going to be an Eagle, kind of shunned him away, but they ended up being true. You could tell Chip Kelly and LaShawn McCoy kind of butted heads and didn't agree with each other's philosophies and playing styles. That being said, another thing when it comes to playing style, Chip Kelly is more of a north-south power runner, and we all know Shady McCoy, he's got the best moves in the NFL, but a lot of the times he wastes 5 yards running east to go 1 yard up north. Right. So I think that's something Chip Kelly really didn't like. You look at a few games last year, the Eagles were 10-6, but 2 games are in particular they could have won and ended up getting in playoffs were against the 49ers and against the Cardinals, where they were both within the 5-yard line. They didn't choose to run the ball at all because Chip Kelly didn't trust a guy like McCoy on the goal line. Now they have Frank Gore, so I think even though he's old, it's a little bit more of a runner that Chip Kelly wants. I'm not saying Frank Gore is going to put up McCoy numbers, but that's the kind of style that Chip Kelly wants, not a guy like LaShawn McCoy. So for me, rather than let him go next year, you might as well get a long-term investment in Kiko Alonso, who I believe will be an Eagle for the years to come. And I think they can really build a nice defensive unit around Kiko. So whether it be the cap room, the playing style of McCoy, or just Kiko Alonso, who is a very talented linebacker, I don't think this is a move that people should crucify Chip Kelly for.
No, I don't think they should crucify him, but I don't think...
You think they should burn him?
I just don't think it's a smart move to bring in someone again off an ACL injury. I know you backed up with the Gronk stuff, but it's the hardest injury to come back from is tearing an ACL. And for someone so young like Alonso, I get it if it was a guy who's probably 27, 28, had 6 years in the league under his belt and knew what it took to come back from it, but Alonso's only played 1 full season, and so it's just a lot to invest, was my thing. I think if they gave away like picks or people like that, then it would make sense. But they gave away a top 5 running back, and I don't think you should ever do that.
No, and then that's fair. And I see the counterpoint to people saying that this was a bad deal, but I just, from knowing a lot about the Eagles and the system and the cap space and all that stuff, I think that they cleared up so much cap room. So now you look at some of the moves they made as we transition forward. They get Byron Maxwell. They get Frank Gore. Just for starters, they get those 2 guys. Byron Maxwell was a name in free agency that you always heard was linked to the Eagles, and not to toot my own horn, but you can vouch for me on this.
I know.
5-6 months ago, I was calling Byron Maxwell to be an Eagle, and I love that move. As far as Frank Gore, I'm kind of indifferent about it. I get why they brought him in because he's a north-south runner. He's a power back, but I don't think he's going to – I mean, they do have Darren Sproles. They do have Chris Polk, so I don't think he's going to see a lot of – he's going to be the starting running back, but I don't know how long he'll be on the field every 4 downs or whatnot. But, I get why they made the Frank Gore move. I'm not in love with it. I don't hate it. I'm just kind of indifferent. They re-signed Sanchez, kind of just indifferent about that too.
Right.
I understand why they need a backup quarterback because whether they get Mariota or they get Foles, if those don't work out, you have a pretty solid backup in Mark Sanchez.
And even if they don't get one of those two, you could honestly, I could see Sanchez being the starter.
Yeah, I mean, he won games last year. He lost games last year. So he's definitely need to improve if you want to be a starter. I think he'll play more of a backup role. But as far as the other move that I really love that the Eagles made is Byron Maxwell. I think he's going to be, no doubt, the best defensive back and the best corner the Eagles had in quite some time. I think just like Kiko Alonso, this is a long-term deal. And Byron Maxwell really solidifies that this could be a defensive unit that is a force to be reckoned with in the NFC. And I think Maxwell is great along with the guys I mentioned like Kiko and Connor Barwin because now I think the defense will be able to hang with the top NFC teams like the Packers, like the Seahawks, teams like that. And I think you need a good defense to hang with those teams, not so much a good offense.
I agree with that, but I just don't. I think Maxwell he's getting a little too much hype because
he was in that LOB, but he was the fourth guy.
Exactly. He's playing behind Sherman, Chancellor, Earl Thomas. He's the fourth guy that people, you say Byron Maxwell, oh yeah, he's on Seattle, he does a great job, but he sort of gets overlooked because of how good Sherman and Thomas and Chancellor.
You didn't say shat on.
No, I was gonna say shadowed. But just the way that I think he plays a good style of defense, but I just think he's getting a little overvalued, really, because of how good Sherman, Thomas, and Chancellor were.
Well, I do agree with you that he was overpaid, but I also think he was the best cornerback in free agency. I mean, Revis is obviously amazing, but he's the one-year investment, so as far as the Eagles getting Revis, I wouldn't have wanted it because he's kind of just a one-year rental for teams.
But I don't think he's going to be a rental, though. I think he wants like a 3-4 year deal, and I would think teams would be willing to give him that because I think he's the best corner in the game.
I think last year there's no doubt he was the best corner in the game. But just going back to Maxwell, though, I think for the value and for longevity, I think he was the best cornerback value to have. And I think the Eagles did throw a little bit too much money at him, maybe too many years, but they needed a cornerback like that. I mean, they get rid of Cary Williams, Bradley Fletcher, guys like that. They're just getting toasted by these wide receivers.
Yep.
Brandon Boykin is a good cornerback that the Eagles have. They don't play him much, which always shocks me. But I love the Maxwell deal. I think he came there to be that number one guy, not to, I think he even knew that he was a little bit overshadowed in Seattle by the other three that you named. So now there is no doubt that he is the number one cornerback in Philly. He loves the system. He's, always been raving about the Eagles. So I knew it was set in stone once this all started that Byron Maxwell would be an Eagle. So the Maxwell deal, I give it an A- based on how big of an impact. The Gore deal, I give it a B just because I don't think he's going to flourish, but I don't think he's going to, just flat out suck either. And then Mark Sanchez, I'll just give it a pass. I don't know what grade I give a backup quarterback.
See, I like the Gore deal, I think, more than you do, because the way I look at Frank Gore is he's not going to amaze you with his numbers, but he is the most consistent running back in the
I agree
NFL.
with that. And somebody made that point, and I looked at his numbers. He rushed for over 1,000 yards.
No one talks about him.
Didn't even know about it because
exactly.
nobody wants him in fantasy, and that's where half the people base.
Do you remember
my
my nice trade earlier this year?
Traded him out of rage.
I needed 3 points on a Monday night game. He got me 20 yards. I immediately traded him after the game.
But somehow, like you said, he's Mr. Consistent, and he's a great power running back. He's brute strength, north to south running, and that's what Chip Kelly wants. So I see what you're saying there. I just don't think because of his age, I think that's the biggest thing why it doesn't wow me. He's got to decline sometime, and this very well could be the year he declines.
It could be, and I agree, because people talk about all the time when you hit that age 30 wall that running backs have, they don't have a very long lifespan. Frank Gore is at that point in his career where I think he's going to start to go downhill, but I don't think it's going to be a steep downhill. I think it's going to be more of a gradual, maybe this year he won't get to 1,000 yards. He'll get to 950, something like that. but then it'll keep going down and down, and that's what we saw with Maurice Jones-Drew. He chose to retire this year while he still had somewhat value in it. I mean, he rushed in Oakland behind McFadden, but he still could have rushed for another smaller team this year that didn't have a good running game. Frank Gore, I think, could be the answer that the Eagles were looking for to fill in LaShawn McCoy's hole, and I think he'll get more bang for his buck than people are thinking.
And then the last big thing that happened to the Eagles, they really couldn't control this, but it was, in my opinion, the biggest blow of the Eagles all season was Jeremy Maclin getting reportedly and pretty much set in stone to sign with his former coach, Andy Reid, and the KC Chiefs. Obviously, that KC Chiefs wide receiving core is brutal, one of the worst I've ever seen. No touchdowns last year. Jeremy Maclin pretty much had better numbers than every single wide receiver on the Chiefs last year. He had an outstanding year, Jeremy Maclin. He was a Pro Bowler coming off of injury. By far and away the number one receiver on that Eagles team. And now that he's in KC, the dust has settled in Philly. You have Jordan Matthews and Riley Cooper as your wide receivers. That's a big blow for the Eagles.
It is.
And I know Chip Kelly is confident that he's going to score points no matter if he had, little leaguers out there, Pee Wee football out there. He thinks he could score points. But, I mean, McCoy leaving, Deshaun Jackson leaving, I understood the reasons why, and I know it wasn't in their control with Macklin leaving, but that's a huge blow. This was a guy that I tweeted a couple days ago would be the face of the franchise if he came back to Philly. With Trent Cole gone, McCoy gone, now Macklin gone, there's no true face. I think the face of the franchise is Chip Kelly.
I wouldn't disagree with you.
And I think with Macklin gone, I mean, this is a huge blow, but I get why that the Eagles didn't sign him. He was asking for more money than Randall Cobb.
Yeah.
He was.
In his defense, he did have close to as good of a season as
he had a very, very good season. I think if Gronk didn't win Comeback Player of the Year, it was going to be Macklin that won it. He was asking for a lot of money, so I get why the Eagles didn't sign him back. But, man, is that a blow. That Eagles offense is going to be a completely revamped offense. So is the defense. It's like the defense is now the strong point of that team, it looks like, on paper.
It very well could be. And the thing with the Eagles receiving core is now you talked about you have Cooper and Jordan Matthews. Cooper has been severely under par since he came into the league. I mean, at Florida he was fantastic. It looked like a good deep threat, a good guy for someone to have, but then that's all he does is just run downfield. He runs 30, 40-yard routes and expects that the quarterbacks can chuck it up to him all game long.
He's very good at blocking, and
that's his thing.
That's his thing, but I mean, at the end of the day, you need a receiver to catch the
ball.
And if that's not your thing, you shouldn't be on the team. I'm curious to see, with the lack of wide receivers that the Eagles really do have, because they're not a deep wide receiver team at all. I'm curious to see if they go for a guy like Crabtree. I know they're not going to go for
Well, they would have, but he just as you were saying that, just signed with the Buffalo Bills.
Oh,
He's about
my
to sign
goodness.
With the Bills.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm dead serious.
Wow. Crabtree a Bill. Well, that's
Crabtree, Watkins, and McCoy all under Matt Castle's jurisdiction.
Rex Ryan, man, he is making moves. Well, then that just kind of threw me off for what I'm saying. Anyway, though, so they can't go for Crabtree, they can't go for Torrey Smith. The only guy really left to go for is maybe a guy like Cecil Shorts.
Yeah,
who wouldn't be terrible to have, but I mean, I'm very curious about what this Eagles wide receiving threat is going to look like. The offense, I think under Chip Kelly they'll be able to score points regardless. But I mean, overall, just when we're starting to wrap up here on the Sports Vision podcast, it's been an off season for the Eagles that every single person from Adam Schefter all the way down has talked about the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a team that I would love to see on Hard Knocks. I don't think they're going to be on it because Chip is kind of a private guy. But man, the Eagles are making headlines day after day, and I don't think they're stopping now. There's reports that Ingram signed. They were into Ingram, but he signed. There was a report that they can go for a guy like Jason Wardles. I read last night at like 2 a.m. that Cap was on the trading block, and they would go for Cap, but that has since been shut down, that rumor. The last big thing the Eagles may do is trade up for Mariota.
And that would make a lot of sense for what Chip Kelly's trying to do. But I don't know. I mean, I'm a big guy. I'm a big believer in Jameis, and I think he's the better of the two pro prospects. I think Mariota is a complete system guy, so I think the only system he will succeed in is Chip Kelly's.
I would agree with that.
So if the Eagles decide not to trade up for him, I think he will be a bust. I think that someone, unless they run the exact same system that Kelly ran at Oregon or that he's running now with the Eagles, I don't think Mariota is going to succeed. He was recruited from the state of Hawaii because he could run the system that Chip Kelly at the time wanted, and now Mark Helfrich is running at Oregon. the way it translates to the NFL, it's just a run-and-go style. It doesn't really have a motive except just to get to the line as quick as you can and just try to make a play happen. Mariota's a guy that is used to that, but teams that need a quarterback, like the Bills or the Browns after losing Brian Hoyer, they don't run that kind of system. They run the traditional pro-style, slow it down, pocket passer type offense, and Jameis is more accustomed to that, I think, than Mariota.
And I agree with you in that sense. I do think he's a day one starter who will wreck some teams' defenses if he's on the Eagles. If not, he might be a bust. We'll see what happens with the Eagles. Last question, Anthony.
Yep.
And we'll both answer this one. Chip Kelly, mad scientist that is going to bring the Eagles their first Lombardi, or is he going to be out of the league in 2 years?
I honestly...
He's putting it all in on
his
system. He's saying, this is me, this is my
completely
guy.
all
I've never
him.
seen somebody be so confident in their scheme, maybe since Bill Belichick, and even then, I don't know, this guy in Chip Kelly, he's throwing everything out the window. He threw out Deshaun, he threw out McCoy, he threw out Macklin, threw out Trent Cole, all these top Philly names for years. He's saying, nope, they're not good for my system. So let's roll with my system and let's bring this place to Lombardi.
And for those reasons, I think it's all on him. So if they don't win, if they don't at least get to the NFC Championship game in the next 2 years, I think he is out of the league. I think it is a very, very tough place to succeed in as a coach. And I think when you put it all on yourself like he has, I don't think, like you said, I don't think I've ever seen a coach have so much power in the moves that the team is making as Chip Kelly. And it's only his third year in the league. So he's putting all the pressure on him. If they don't succeed, I think he's out.
I think for me, when you look at the Eagles' tradition, you got Andy Reid, you have other coaches, and they've never won a Super Bowl. Andy Reid got the can because he was kind of just a little bit lackadaisical, didn't really look ahead into his moves. I think Chip Kelly is the master of not utilizing, but knowing what move is going to do what for the team. I think he's such a brilliant, such a genius guy when it comes to football. I think because the Eagles have never won before, Eagles fans should be all in on Chip.
I agree.
Because this is a guy that's trying his hardest. He's putting in such an effort, something that people didn't think Andy Reid did. I think there is a method to his madness, and I'm not saying the Eagles will win the Super Bowl in the next 2 years, but I do think the Eagles with Chip Kelly will become a dominant NFC team for years to come.
They need to be.
They need to be, or else he's going to lose a lot of money.
Yes.
Until he goes back to Oregon. No, but I think Chip Kelly is the mad scientist who can bring the Eagles the Lombardi Trophy and definitely will bring the Eagles to the playoffs next year.
Yeah. I mean, Eagles fans better hope he does.
Yes,
or else...
because they will have him hanging in the middle of Philly if not. Anthony Notarile, Anthony Santaniello, Sports Vision Podcast. We hope you enjoyed, hope you listened, and we'll see what happens with the Philadelphia Eagles when kickoff starts in 2015.